This is going to be a fun one. Day 4. So I was about to start recording and I thought, you know what? I'm going to write down some topics to talk about today, because the drawback of the previous ones, I've been free flowing, and part of the learning process here is being able to go, actually, why did I stop in the last ones? And what made some of the previous ones videos good was having some sort of topic to riff on. And today's topic is going to be perfectionism. This is purely around needing to be seen as good at something. Now, this has been fun over the years, especially in this journey of exploring video and recording, putting myself in a video format that's going to be locked in forever. In my past life, my past version of myself when I was performing music was that I was okay as long as my stuff didn't get recorded. Live, it was fine. I could make mistakes, I could do all that sort of thing. But as soon as there was actually footage of those mistakes or footage of that thing that I was doing, I would recoil inside, because ultimately I didn't want to look back and refine. I didn't want to be faced with actually the performance that I did was equally great, because I did exactly whatever was balanced out with what my capabilities were, and I can also improve upon it. So that reflective sort of thing, I didn't want to do that. And so seeing recorded videos was like, ugh, I don't want to go near that. That's why this is happening, because there's a reviewal process within this, videos that I can go back on. And I would highly recommend you do the same. Now, this whole idea of perfectionism is like, well, who is allowed to see you in an imperfect format? This is you trying a new practice. Maybe you're learning to do a new sport, new activity, a new creative pursuit, and maybe you suck at it. It's the accepting of sucking at it that allows us to move forward. That is doing these videos for me currently. And also, me as a musician, I mentioned my past life, that's the version of me prior. There's the version of me now who steps into all of the challenges. So I'm having trouble saying these things because I'm realizing the lack of conviction that I have in saying it. So interesting. These are the things that come up when I'm riffing on ideas. I realize that I start to trip up on words when I'm not embodying the things that I'm talking about. It doesn't come out smoothly because I don't feel it, and I go, I'm going to call bullshit on that. So when was the last time that you said something that was bullshit? It was obviously bullshit, and you still said it anyways, because maybe you wanted to impress someone. Maybe you wanted someone else to see that you were a higher authority at something, or that you knew something, that you were smart, that you were really skilled at something. Because what the perfectionism thing does is stops us from actually doing new things. It stops us from trying. It stops us from playing the game, because I think I mentioned this in one of my previous videos, the concept of playing the game. Are we playing the game to win, or are we playing in order to not lose, which is to not actually play the game in the first place? This concept has become such a profound guidance for my life, and going into 2024, it's a big motto. Am I playing to win? That is, am I holding myself back? For example, in these videos, again, I keep referring back to it. This is the practice of going, well, what am I holding back? What things in my expression am I holding back? When do I stop myself from riffing? Like really just going on a rant, There's things that I want to go on a rant about, and they're going to be all unveiled at the end of this 30 days. Because, for example, like self-limiting beliefs. I've been trying this new practice lately, and it's happened over the last couple of days. For those of you who have heard of his work, maybe you haven't, David Allen, he does this practice that is called getting things done. And it's simply about emptying your mind. It's about getting everything that is an open loop in your mind and putting it out. I put it out on Trello. So I put it out on a board and I write open loops in my head around songs. And this is where I've got half-finished songs in my head that are sitting there taking up space, and they take up bandwidth. All of the beliefs that I have about myself, whether they're positive or negative, if they're still running around in my head, chances are that they are open loops. There's no reason for them to live there. Either I'm trying to convince myself of something that I am, or I'm trying to reinforce some sort of past behavior or habit. So where do you actually have your in your head, what loops do you still have open? When you think about this, like what are the things that you have to have done? The things that you're thinking about doing tomorrow, later today, whether they are in 6 months' time. Maybe you've got a trip booked somewhere overseas and you've got the itinerary sitting there playing around in your head. Or maybe you've got a live performance. Maybe you're performing music in front of someone and you know that that's happening in a week's time. And all you can think about is that thing of the event that's in your head playing over and it's driving you mad. By actually putting that down onto a piece of paper, we can start to plot out steps to get there. That's what this whole practice does. It says, if I have a goal, which is to have my car serviced. So this is one that I wrote down. What are the steps required to get my car serviced? Because if I have car serviced there, that can be sitting there for months and I can ignore it. I know the steps in my head, and until they actually are down on a piece of paper or written down on my Trello document, I might not put them in my calendar as something that's easy. And if I don't schedule it, it doesn't get done. So this is where this practice has been amazing, because all of a sudden, tasks that seemed like I just basically didn't want to do them, are now becoming these tasks where, well, it only requires a minute to send the mechanic a message or call them up and say, hey, I want to book in. And at that point, we can actually you can see those steps and go, well, to get my car serviced isn't just getting my car serviced. It's making a phone call. It's picking up my phone, opening up the contacts, scroll to the mechanic. And let's say you didn't have a mechanic that you wanted to contact. Well, then you could have on your list to open up Google, search local mechanics in your area. And so then you would come up with a bunch of mechanics, and then you can take action on that. But until you've actually done the research, you don't actually book in for a service. So this whole process is around connecting all of the dots. And the big meta lesson here is that I realized I hadn't been implementing any of this in my life. This is coming down to setting big goals, and specifically 10x goals. These ones where for years I've imagined myself being in front of a crowd of 10,000 people and performing and feeling the vibe of everyone in that crowd. And yet to actually achieve that requires a ton of little steps. And whilst I look at the vision, there's no steps there. And I'd had this explained to me before, but it never landed in this way. So I love how this stuff just all of a sudden clicks and makes sense. Someone connects a dot and you're like, oh, yes, that makes sense. So now I'm plotting out the plan to get there. How do I get to 10,000 people? What does it require? What does it require of me? What am I turning up for? Because I can say, work towards my goals, and it's pretty empty. That's not something that you can confirm to a judge. If you had a plan mapped out that said, well, in order to reach 10,000 people in one crowd, that might require me to have 1 million followers on Instagram or 1 million monthly listeners on Spotify. This is, these are different metrics. They are things that can be measured. And then I go, well, how can I achieve 1 million monthly listeners? What are the steps required for that? What are the steps required to have a big social media following? Well, firstly, it's going to require me turning up to social media. It's going to require me turning up and making content. It's going to require me interacting with people. There's so many steps. And once I break it all down and go, okay, what do I do with my music? My steps in order to do my releases. Do I do them by just putting out a song and not saying anything about it? Or do I say, well, I'm actually going to take the best steps possible in order to get there? That has opened up a whole can of worms and a whole bunch of things that I never thought about when I thought about achieving the dream and working towards it. I just saw this dream in the future and I was like, yeah, maybe it'll happen. Wish upon a star. Imagine that it'll happen. And maybe it'll happen. It's not going to happen. Not in the way that I was going. The only way that it will happen is if I break down the steps and start working towards it. Start putting in the hours, start putting in the time, start putting in the practice. And the same thing is said for this voice coaching work and helping to bring out people's voices, is that there's some fire for me to step into. That is me doing these recordings. And so if you're looking at doing something like this, whether it's speaking on camera, whether it's practicing for the Olympics, it doesn't really matter. The main thing is, the point of this is the ways out of perfectionism is to simply lay out the steps to get to where we're going. Lay out a strategy. Cool. Actually, there's something as well in Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art. He mentions the hardest thing for an artist to do is say a painter. The hardest part about finishing a painting is sitting down to paint. The hardest thing about a writer finishing a book is sitting down to write. And the same thing goes for every endeavor. Until we define what that first step is, and is it effective for moving in the direction that we're going in, we're just going to spin our wheels. Because we look busy, we look like we're doing all the things, people are seeing us being productive, or maybe we're not even being seen being productive. Maybe we see our friends and family, and every time we see them, they go, hey, what have you been up to? And you're like, yeah, I've been working really hard on my business. This was a trap for myself. I was doing this for a long time. And I would love to tell people about the things that I wanted them to see me as. So if people ask me, hey, what have you been up to? Oh, just doing music stuff and writing and doing all that sort of thing. When in the back of my mind, I was lying. I truthfully was not practicing music. I was spending my time watching Netflix, and I was spending my time scrolling through social media, wasting my time, and that is not such a valuable use of my time. And now this isn't to demonize that side of me. However, in putting these steps together and starting to create a map for myself, I'm like, I don't have any time to watch Netflix. I don't necessarily want to. This is also a trap in itself, right? Because there are things that I like doing that aren't business related, that aren't related to the voice. And for 2024, it's about weighing those things up and going, you know what? What is more important at this moment? What sacrifices am I going to make? The sacrifices might look like maybe it's doing less of some of the things that I like doing or that I love doing. Maybe it's doing more of them. That's something that I can decide. Something else that's also come to my awareness is around when we're trying to be busy and trying to always do stuff, we actually end up less productive. And this is pretty evident when I look at when I'm working side jobs. What happens is I'll go to work for 6, 7, 8 hours. And at the end of that time, I value the hours either side of that much more. When it's coming up to that, I'm like, oh, I'm going to be working all day tomorrow. I end up more productive in whatever I'm doing. Because truthfully, one of the things that have been controlling me for a long time and that I've allowed to control me is the fear of running out of time. And that fear, it's been holding me in stasis. And that has been a choice of mine, to be afraid of time running out, and therefore I also end up wasting it because I'm too busy thinking about time that I'm not actually living. So, if you put such a high value on time and you think about it all the time, are you actually being productive? Are you taking consistent action out of fear? Or are you taking it out of a place of strength? Are you moving in that direction because it feels right, because it feels aligned? Or are you afraid of the time running out and you regretting yourself? Because that's quite a bind. You know, we can get into talking about when we're caught up in our heads around certain beliefs. The beliefs that we have about ourselves, they end up controlling us. It is our ego holding us in place, and we choose for it to stay there. And so if I'm constantly worrying about time running out, I'm also trying to be busy all the time because I'm afraid of time running out. I'm not doing things that I love doing because I don't have enough time. Maybe I project at people, this is something that I've done, projected at other people that do creative pursuits, that really indulge, let's say, that really go after the things that they love. And the projection is, well, they've got so much time on their hands. You know, wouldn't it be nice to have so much time on your hands that we can do these fun projects? When in reality, these people are simply choosing their passion instead of doing something else. It's guaranteed you've wasted some of your time today. You scrolled through the Instagram, scrolled through Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. And if you haven't, then great. It's this perception where we want to point the blame at other people and say, well, that's nice for them to say. I heard this thing around, I think was it Beethoven or Mozart? Don't know if I've got the person correct. Everyone basically has 24 hours in a day, and everyone that you can think of, anyone that's achieved massive success, anyone that's done a lot in their lives, and also the people who don't achieve in their lives. You have 24 hours. You have the same amount of time that everyone else does. And yet some people make massive movements from this amount of time. When you take massive movements, that's arguably a more efficient use of time. And if you're not making massive movements in your life, maybe it's about being present. Maybe it's simply about being present instead of being worried about the past or time running out. That's also an equally valid use of your 24 hours. Unless you're resenting it. If you're resenting being present, do you have something that you want to do? Do you have something that is a calling for you? Something that is asking for your full attention? And are you willing to give it your full attention? Because until you do, it's going to sit there rattling away in the back of your head. This is the importance of that practice I was talking about before. Funny, I did it 3 days ago, and it's changed my entire life. It's changed my whole view on seeing the world and seeing my goals and seeing my ambitions. And really choosing to claim it. In choosing to claim these things, we can actually start to move towards them. We can start to tell people about these things, about these dreams, about these aspirations, about that inner voice that we hear inside of ourselves that speaks up every now and then. Actually, it never really stops talking. You'd know the one. It's the one that you're telling is not enough. It's the one that you're saying, please shut up, I don't want to hear about it. When someone asks you what was your big ambition as a child, or what is something that you wish you could do in the world, and that voice comes up and says, ooh, there's this there. You don't give it a voice. Most people don't. Because if they voice it, then they might have to change their ways. Their habits will be changing. Their entire life will change if they speak that truth. That is the thing that people are most afraid of, their full potential, their future, their present, their past. Most people would prefer to leave that voice in the dark, like Harry Potter under the stairs, try to ignore its existence. And yet it's never truly hidden. It's never truly unheard. You hear it every day. You just choose not to listen. I know this because I was doing this myself for a very long time. And it hurts. It hurts to face the music, to face the truth of that voice that's been speaking, that if we allow it to be heard, then we're faced with guilt and shame and regret for having repressed it. And that can be difficult to face. Because what about all that time that's happened in the past? That time that you've wasted, right? Because you've known that voice is there, has been there for the last 10 years. It's been there for maybe 20 years, maybe 30 years, maybe 40, 50. Depends how long you've been here for. That voice never went away. No matter how much you tried to snuff it away, it was always there. And it's still there. Calling you to a higher purpose, into a higher vision. Do you have the courage to listen to it? Do you have the humility to listen to it, to face it? Because until you are, you're going to recreate your life in what was sold to you. You were sold a dream that wasn't yours. You were sold an idea of the future, an idea of success. And yet that's not what your voice is saying. You went to school and you learnt all of the things that make you a good slave, that allow you to take orders, that allow you to be who they want you to be. And who is they? Maybe they is your parents. Maybe they is society. Maybe they is whatever you think they is. Because until you claim that voice for yourself and claim ownership over that voice that is inside of you, there are other authorities that own your tongue. And isn't that a terrifying thought? Look at the things that you're not allowed to say. What are you not allowed to talk about within your own perception? Are you allowed to talk about sexuality? Are you allowed to talk about conspiracy theories? Are you allowed to talk about getting injections? Just highlighted something there. Are you allowed to talk about COVID-19? Are you allowed to talk about the separation that was created from that entire situation? It divided the entire nation. It divided the world, right? You're either a vaxxer or a non-vaxxer. When truly, what actually matters here is not whether you're a vaxxer or a non-vaxxer. It matters whether you are, whether you can see that you're on the same side as the other people. The people that you're creating war against, the people that you're attacking, are actually on your side. You're actually on the same team. We're on team humanity. And when we can step out of our own shit and accept that people have different opinions to us, and that changing people's opinions doesn't actually bring them over to our side, well, that's another illusion itself, right? That there are sides. It's two sides of the same coin, and we're fighting over the coin. What happens when we just go, you know what? I don't want the coin. I want what's looking at the coin. I'm going to start looking at the coin instead of trying to claim the coin. Because whilst you think you're right and I think I'm right, we're fighting over a coin. Maybe it's a 5-cent piece. Maybe it's completely worthless in real tangible value. It actually doesn't mean anything in the whole scope of things. And yet we're going to sit there and argue over a 5-cent piece instead of going, you know what? I don't need the 5-cent piece. If you want it, you can have it. It's a 5-cent piece. I'm not going to lose sleep over a 5-cent piece. As soon as we raise the value of the coin that we're fighting over, maybe it's $2 coin, maybe it's $100 note. Okay, what if we're fighting over two sides of the same note? We're going, because we perceive that there's a higher value in this belief. And that in order to lose, well, that's almost death, right? If I simply sit by and don't argue this point and don't tell this person that they're wrong, well, that means they get the $100 note. And so we fight this ego battle that goes nowhere. Sitting there fighting over $100 note. It could be 5 cents, could be $100. Instead of going, like if you want the $100 so badly, if you're trying to fight for this $100, you must need it more than I do. So sure, have it. And so, to wrap up that one, what is the value that you've placed upon your belief that you're fighting for, that you're fighting tooth and nail for? How much do you need to be right? And how willing are you to be wrong? What if you are wrong? What if being wrong means that you forfeit that $100? That $100, mind you, it was never yours to begin with. It was never yours to really claim, because that money is simply an illusion, it's an exchange. And whilst you're investing your time and energy into an argument, where else could that energy be spent that's more valuable? Could it be spent in maybe working on your soul's mission, maybe sitting in presence, maybe it could be used to meditate, maybe that energy and attention could be used to show love to the people that you care most about. Maybe it's picking up that guitar that you haven't picked up in years, instead of needing to be right. That actually may be more valuable to you. So it's about reevaluating what value is to you. Because $100 sure isn't worth fighting over. Definitely not worth fighting over. So money comes and goes. And maybe if someone is fighting you for $100, it's like, yep, they need it. Sure, bro, take it. If you're willing to fight over it, you probably do need it more than I do. And that said and done, thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. That is my 30-minute timer set off, actually 31 minutes. I'd really love to hear if anyone's actually watching these videos. If you are, send me a comment, send me a DM or something like that. Find me on Instagram, follow me along on there. And I look forward to deepening these stories with you and sharing more of my thoughts. So, peace out and big love.